JKB back with another episode. Today on the show I'm reviewing Crash Bandicoot 4. Thank you to Activision for the review copy. Crash Bandicoot 4 is an action platformer where you take control of Crash Bandicoot and his sister Coco in a platforming game that harkens back to the original PlayStation. For me personally, this is one of those throwback games that really got me into gaming. When the PlayStation was originally announced and I saw Crash Bandicoot for it, it was something I had to play. When you start the game up, you're introduced to the longest user agreement I've ever seen in my whole career, and this is ridiculous. What is this doing at the beginning of a video game? Before you jump into the game, you're given an option, and that is the playstyle mechanics of the game itself. You can choose Modern, which is when you die, you continue from the last checkpoint, which I think a lot of people might be into, or a Retro style, where you have limited lives, and when you run out of them, you must restart the level. So I'm glad to see they have both of those options available for this game. The game also features over 30 levels throughout the multiverse, which ties into the story, and I don't want to give it away, but let's just say some villains have escaped again, and it's up to Crash Bandicoot and his sister Coco to save the multiverse. While the platforming is obviously very important to this type of game, I do think that the original game plays into this. Did they capture the original spirit, the tone, the feel of the original trilogy? And I have to say, without a shadow of a doubt, they've nailed all of that stuff, and I've had a blast playing this game. One of my favorite new mechanics in the game are the masks. You're able to put them on and get special abilities, such as slowing down time, which you can kind of understand will change up the gameplay in quite a different way. This means that platforms slow down and enemies also move in slow motion, meaning you have to time your jumps to a different timing when you're using the ability. There's another one that gives you constant spinning throughout the whole level, so it's complete mayhem, and you have to try to get through a level while he's just spinning, and it's over the top fun, and it really does work. In terms of the enemies, you'll come across amazingly designed looking enemies with amazing animations attached to them. However, I do feel like you can kill over 95% of the enemies with the simple spin attack, and that's something that was out of the original game, so I can't really sit back and say that is a negative in this game. Now let me get into the amount of content in this game. Later into the game, you'll get a cast of characters that you can unlock to use in the levels. I won't spoil this, but it really added a ton more content to the game, and some of these types of characters you use control a little differently than Coco and Crash, so you'll get something out of that at the end of the game. And of course, just like the past trilogy, you get tons of secrets to discover within all of the levels. And just when you think you're out of content in the game, nope, there's something called inverted levels that comes in later into the game, and this changes the levels up from the actual visual look of the levels and the effects in the levels to actually making them much harder. And just when you think there's too much content in the game, they introduce the gem system, which is a sort of a currency that will unlock skins for both Coco and Crash Bandicoot. You use these in between the levels to unlock all of the skins. Now, in the levels themselves, you'll be breaking crates, collecting the fruit, and finding hidden gems throughout the levels, and you also sometimes get some gems by beating a level without dying more than 3 times. And now the most important part of the review, I'm going to talk about how it runs on the Nintendo Switch. Now, at 720p in docked mode, it does look a little blurry at times. However, I'm actually very impressed with what the developer was able to do with this game. I also have to say, I did notice it go over that to around 800p in certain sections of certain levels. However, it has to do with what's going on screen. When more is happening on screen, you're just not going to get that resolution past 720. Now, for the handheld mode, it runs at about 540p, and some people might be a little disappointed to see that it is blurry at times in handheld mode, so you have to deal with textures not being as sharp as the docked mode and nowhere near as good as the PlayStation 5. So if you're expecting anything like a PlayStation 4 version on the Switch, you are not going to get that here. However, you do get a fully playable version of the game, and on the go, it is amazing to be playing a new Crash Bandicoot game. So a word of the warning here, it is amazing in docked mode. I was very impressed with what they've done with the game. The Unreal Engine that they used here is quite impressive on the Nintendo Switch. So seeing it in the 540p on the go is, a little disappointing, but it is totally playable. And as for the frame rate, it's about 30 frames per second. However, it does dip a little bit. Sometimes on screen you'll notice a little bit of a jitter, but it's nothing that's going to really impact the gameplay in general. However, I should say if you're playing on a PlayStation 5, of course, that's at 60 frames per second, so don't expect anything like that here. And I gotta reiterate, it is still very playable on the Nintendo Switch. You're just not getting that buttery smoothness out of a PlayStation 5, and I don't believe I need to say that in this review. I think you would probably assume that. Overall, I'm going to give the game a solid 8 out of 10. I highly recommend it if you're a huge fan of Crash Bandicoot. If you're a fan of platformers in general, highly suggest to pick this one up because you're getting a great experience on the Nintendo Switch. And on top of it, there's a ton of collectibles in the game and skins and all of that fun stuff that you expect in platformers these days. They've nailed all of it. It's all in the game here. I think the only real problem with the game that I experienced in the 8 to 10 hour range of playtime is the fact that sometimes levels do feel a little long and checkpoints are just in weird situations, and I don't know if they captured the overall tone of Crash himself. They obviously had to redo the model, and some people are just not a huge fan of that redesign. While I am not in that boat, I do feel like the game is as good as it could have been, so 8 out of 10. I highly recommend it to the people who are excited to play this on the Switch. It's not a letdown. It's not really a huge disappointment that it is only 540p in handheld mode. That was something I was expecting. I'm a little, just a touch disappointed on how blurry it can get, but overall, highly recommend it if you're into platforming. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next episode of JKB.